Hi guys! So the book I chose for this project is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. Here's a little picture for it. And it's very short. It's around 110 pages and it has a lot of chapters, and each chapter is roughly minimum 2 pages, maximum 4 pages. And the reason that she formatted it this way is to show the narrator goes through a lot of experiences, and she goes through that in forms of writing down her experiences so then she can learn from them and look back at them. And this is she formatted it in a very poetic way, so each short chapter is not quite a story. It's more of like a little poem to kind of express her creativity. And basically I'm going to be going through the handout that I have for the literary review. And then I'm also going to be discussing different ways you can answer this for a question 3 prompt, because it not only does it have to do with culture, prejudices, and deal with that, but also has to deal with the narrator's coming of age and struggle for identity, as well as a lot of sexual prejudice during that time. So to start off, I'm going to move it over to my trusty iPad, and we'll get started. Sorry for Okay, perfect. So, just to start off, I want to give some historical background, historical context. So, the author was born in 1954 to a Mexican-American family. Basically, her dad was from Mexico, and the mom was a Hispanic lady born in America. And she did grow up in a poor neighborhood in Chicago. And basically, during this time, the Hispanics, or let's say the Chicano Latino community. Chicano is basically a Mexican, and that's kind of the short name for it in America. They were very highly discriminated against because of the Mexican War. And this was a war between the U.S. and Mexico, and it brought up a lot of tension between Mexico and the U.S., and a lot of Hispanic communities were really prejudiced against, and they were sent out to more of a poor neighborhoods, and they just weren't getting the best opportunities. And basically, this has to do a lot, this historical context has to do a lot with, it's central, let's say it's central to the novel, because basically it's reflecting her experiences growing up in these neighborhoods onto the book, and she's living vicariously through the novel. And anyways, so let's continue on. So the experiences she gets growing up is reflected onto this story, and in the society there was 2 different things going on. So we have one, an Anglo-American society. So I'm going to discuss that first. So basically, an Anglo-American society, or also known as a white cultural society, dominated by white men, white women. Basically, ever since the Mexican War, there was a lot of tension, like I said before, and after the Great Depression, a lot of Mexicans were even more discriminated against, and this led to them being undesirable, and not many of them were getting hired, and it was just a really rough time for them. And then another issue that was discussed in this novel, let's number this, issue number 2, is gender prejudice. And this was not just for the Hispanic society. This was for America in general. And basically, many neighborhoods lived in a patriarchal society. So the head of the house was the man. Sorry, that's a horrible picture. And then his wife was a very submissive person. This is generally how it was in this society. And her job was to take care of the children, Sorry, these are horrible drawings. Anyways, her job was to take care, of the children, and the father's job was to do the work, go outside and do work. And basically, this didn't give women many opportunities to better themselves, better their education, and they kind of were stuck in the household. They were very dependent on men. And this is during this time, a lot of feminism was coming in America, and there was a very stereotypical view of women always being working in the house and the men always going out working and providing, and there was a lot of women were very submissive to the households. So basically, even in the introduction, Sandra Cisneros, you're going to find in the introduction, this is going to be on page, I believe it's, XXI. And this is going to reflect the different feelings women felt during the time, and especially the author. So she says, what is the woman in the photograph afraid of? And this is herself. And let me show you the woman in the photograph right now. So, this is Sandra Cisneros at the time writing about her experiences and wanting a house of her own. And anyways, so she was saying, what is the woman in that photograph afraid of? And then there was many instances of feeling scared to go out, falling in love, because in her case, when many women fell in love, this was actually dangerous because that was when they lost their independence and they have to submit to another man, and the man would be in charge of them. So this is something that she did not want to give up, and you can see this arising conflict in the novel. So a lot of the historical context does reflect and is essential to what the novel is about. Okay, so let's go to the narrative arc. So basically, the exposition, we're introduced to Esperanza. Here we go. Okay, this is going to be Esperanza for now. And basically, she introduces a story with the first chapter. And the first chapter is basically called The House on Mango Street, which is the title of the novel. And she talks about not just Mango Street, but different areas she had lived in. So she went from one house to the next house to another one. And they were all from very poor neighborhoods. So she's constantly moving around. And then she specifically talks about the house on Mango Street. And she emphasizes that the house is theirs, but they don't have to pay rent or anything, but it's also not hers. So she desires to have a house of her own where she can be independent. So she wants autonomy. And in this chapter, we're just basically getting a glimpse of what Esperanza is like, and it's just introducing the setting and how the house on Mango Street is in a very poor neighborhood. So a few chapters down, we start to see some conflicts coming down in the exposition. This chapter is boys and girls. So the first line says, the boys and girls live in separate worlds. So this is beginning to start to show some gender disparities that she gets to see early in the novel. And from this, we can see that the different things that, like the different prejudices that were going on were slowly becoming evident in her life at such a young age, and she was starting to address that. And basically, before I go on further, I just want to say that the short stories in this novel, they basically have meanings to them. So they're not in chronological order at all, and they're all interconnected in some way. They all reflect and make up the experiences she has on Mango Street. So they not only help teach her about Mango Street, but they also help teach her about herself and who her identity is. And she's trying to figure out her identity, and as she writes more and more short stories, she gets to figure out who she is. So in the boys and girls chapter, she begins to see some gender prejudice. Sorry, that's a 1. And then, okay. And then from this, we get to move on, and then we see her talk about her name. And in the beginning of the novel, Esperanza is very shameful about her identity because she doesn't quite know who she is. And then Esperanza in Spanish means hope. So, so this is a symbol, basically, of her current state and how she's still hopeful to have a new house and desires to escape Mango Street, yet also she remains hopeful and strong in the midst of everything that is going on in Mango Street so far. And she says in the novel, in English, my name means hope. In Spanish, it means too many letters. It means sadness. It means waiting. So she definitely does feel that hope, that good hope of waiting for something good to happen, but then she also feels the burdens of her identity, her culture, bringing her down in society. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to Our Good Day. It's a few chapters down again. Or I'm just skipping around chapters. I just want to make sure that we focus on the essential ones that are critical to writing a good prompt 3 essay. So Our Good Day. Basically in this chapter, Esperanza meets 2 friends, Rachel and Lucy. And these girls also share her Hispanic culture. That's something that doesn't make her feel like an outsider. It brings Esperanza comfort. So, and she's not looked down upon from them. They don't look down upon her because of her heritage. So they make her feel very comfortable. And this chapter is called A Good Day because Esperanza finally feels like she belongs, and then they also found a bike, so getting a bike of her own and getting friends of her own show her as a very independent woman who is capable of just getting things on her own, which in the beginning of the novel she was wanting to do. And then, so as we move on, we're going to move on down to hips. And I want to address hips because this is when Esperanza, this is past all the racial prejudice, all the gender prejudice, and then this is when Esperanza starts focusing on, I'm going to draw hips a little bit, on hips. And this is basically showing her budding sexuality, and she's sexually maturing in the novel. And over in hips, we first get to notice a quick glimpse of her stories maturing as well, and they're getting more and more mature in its context. And then the next chapter is the first job, and then this again, she starts to get more and more into, more and more exposed to a sexual environment. So in the first job, she had to pretend that she was older than she actually was. And this is actually where she got her first kiss, I remember. So I remember the man that was approaching her, right here, let's draw the man. The man that was approaching her was actually a coworker of hers, and she was gonna kiss him on the cheek right here, but then he grabbed her instead and kissed her right on the lips. So this kind of showed because she thought that her sexually growing and maturing was a good thing, and she started wanting to be desired by boys. But then, right at this moment, she kind of saw the violent side of sexuality, and how she wanted an innocent kiss on the cheek right here. But this turned into kind of a sexual assault by an old man because he took advantage of her. And this foreshadows probably something later that's going to happen to Esperanza that makes her question her identity. And then, sorry, I'm coughing. And then, so sexuality is no longer accompanied by like fun stuff and looking at hips, but it's something very oppressive and violent. And this introduces a world of many men that are oppressive and violent. Okay. And then we're going to move on to the rising action. And then, so basically, making friends with Rachel and Lucy does not make her feel like an outsider anymore. But as the story progresses, she does become friends with a new girl named Sally. Now, Sally, I'm going to draw the dress, some nice shoes. Probably give her a little heel. And some lipstick. Some eye makeup. Okay, so Sally is a different type of girl in the novel. She's described as someone that all the boys desire, and she's also trapped by her abusive father. Many men in this novel were very, very, very oppressive or very abusive in this novel. So basically, Sally just wanted to escape her father because she felt very trapped by his presence. And Esperanza noticed that Sally was always desired by boys, but also wanted that independence. So this is why she wanted to be friends with Sally. And so she left Rachel and Lucy for a little bit. And from leaving Rachel and Lucy, she got to actually be exposed more to the world. And then it all started falling downhill when they were in the monkey garden. So this is going to be the monkey garden. Monkey garden. And they were playing, it was full of spirit, liveliness, games. All you could think about was happy. It's a very happy place. And then it was a place for Esperanza to have her innocence grow and her creativity grow and child spirit. And then it all changed when Sally met up with different boys. These are going to be the different boys. And they made her kiss him. And because they were threatening not to give back her keys. So Sally kissed them. And from this moment, Esperanza lost her hope in Sally and was kind of confused because she believed that Sally wanted that independence from men and was going to be able to balance the independence and the desire for men. But then she realizes that Sally does not do that, and Sally just is wanting to be basically entrapped by another relationship. So this leads to the climax, which is called, the chapter of the climax is called Red Clowns. And basically in Red Clowns, this is when Esperanza gets raped. And she blames Sally for the rape because Sally had left her for another boy, and this leads Esperanza and another man to take advantage of her. And this shows, not only does this chapter the Esperanza was blaming Sally for the rape, not the man. And this just shows that she valued a sense of communion. With the women, because she believed that women should always be there for each other and help protect each other. And this is something that became very essential to Esperanza. And then in the following action, Sally ends up getting married. But the ironic thing is that she gets married to an even more oppressive man. So instead of leaving her father, instead of escaping her father, she ends up ironically being trapped into a different situation. And then, so basically, Esperanza at this point, she thought Sally, she thought Sally would be her friend, but this was actually not the case, so she really did not know what to do. She was very confused with who she was and what she wanted to be, and then she was just not in the right state of mind. So then she went back to her less sexually mature friends, Rachel and Lucy. And Rachel and Lucy had a wake for a family member in their family. And over here, this is where Esperanza meets the three sisters. And these sisters help Esperanza realize who she is. And it was a pivotal moment in the book because Esperanza felt like she wasn't, she actually wanted to kill herself, I remember, after the monkey garden and the red clowns, and she just wanted to escape that way. But these three sisters helped her realize who she was and that to come to terms with Mango Street, because although she does not feel like it's a house of her own, it is deeply in her roots, and there's no escaping the Spanish ties into the Spanish culture and being connected to everyone. And although Mango Street is not the house the house of her dreams, she still comes to terms with it and accepts it for what it is, and she finds out that through her writing, she's able to make a house of her own. So the stories she creates, resemble a house that she creates. It's her mind that expands, which allows her to really connect to Mango Street. And then basically in the last chapter, Esperanza finally comes to terms with Mango Street, and despite all the destruction that has happened, she does know that she's definitely moving out of Mango Street, but she will be coming back once she's successful so that she could help the other women. There are plenty of other women who are trapped in this society of men and Mango Street. So she's going to come back to help those women that do not have a voice or are having trouble leaving Mango Street themselves. So basically, in the novel, I just wanted to talk about the essentialness of the short stories. So it's going to be basically kind of a motif kind of thing. And so basically these short stories, as the novel progresses, so do the short stories, and so does Esperanza as a person. And it's a means of finding her own identity. Oh, sorry, that was very sloppy. And they're not, like I said, in chronological order, but they all collectively show that she's growing as a person. And it kind of reminded me of the things they carried and how they're all interconnected with each other and help create like the overall effects of the story. And in the beginning, I kind of thought that the short stories were representative of her short attention span because she was a little girl. So it would be kind of everywhere, going around everywhere. And then these stories, basically, they don't just express like her experiences in the neighborhood and everything, but they also help create who she is as a person. These experiences allow her to explore her own self, not just Mango Street. So I thought that was actually really creative of the author to do. And it was funny because a lot of Hispanics, the short stories also represented a lot of Hispanics in the society. And just like they felt like there was no room for them, each Hispanic person, man or woman, did not feel like there was much space. So there was a lot of people in this novel. These circles are going to represent people. Okay, so there's not enough space on the page for each person to express themselves. So there was not much space in the Spanish neighborhood, and there was not enough space on the page. So this kind of was an exchange with each other. And basically, the overall message of these short poems was you're gonna find it in, I think it's right before, it's the last chapter. It's A House of My Own. And also in Mango Says Goodbye Sometimes, and she says, I like to tell stories, I tell them inside my head. I make a story for my life, for each step my brown shoes take. So each time she goes through something in her life, she also has a story with it. And that's what makes it complete. And each story is something that she creates. Just like the house is something that she creates in her mind. It's not an actual physical house. It's something that she believes, like she creates through her poems. And writing helps set her free and helps build her identity. And this is what we call home in the heart, because it's not a physical place, but something that she makes through writing. And so the next thing I want to talk about is sexuality versus autonomy. Because in the novel, it becomes very clear that Esperanza wants to be her own person, and she wants to have her own house and live her own. She wants to live her life freely and not under the dependence of a man. But then, as she sexually matures, okay, right there, we start to notice that she starts to have a conflict between this is going to be independence and men. And she thinks she can have both, as she thought Sally was able to balance both. But once she realizes that's not the case, she chooses her independence, because that's something that no man can take away, she believes, and that's something that she can use as a means of helping others realize that there's a way to get out of being trapped. And another important theme I wanted to address was the power of language. Because, like I said before, according to the historical context, this was under an Anglo-American society. And obviously, in an Anglo-American society, the main acceptable, let's say, language was English, and English at that time was also what was in the means of making someone successful, and a lot of people were unable to express themselves, and this kind of did not allow them to escape. It kind of stopped them from escaping. And, for example, Esperanza's mother, in a note I remember, Esperanza was complaining about not being able to eat at the lunch table with all the other white children. So she was complaining to her mother and begged her to make a note to the nun. And so Esperanza's mother did make a note. She did write in it, but it was actually very poorly written. And just because of that, the nun did not take it seriously, and didn't take the note into consideration. So just the power of language, in the beginning, we start to see that take into shape. And then Esperanza in the novel becomes one of the most successful characters in the novel because she does exercise her English. So she's able to grow and prosper as an individual. It's not a factor that holds her back. It's something that allows her to move forward. And then there was a character, I remember, her name was Mamacita, and that's a nickname. That's not actually her real name. She was a very large woman. Sorry, this is probably overly drawn. But she refused to come out of her apartment building, I remember. Oh, the camera moved. I'm so sorry. So this is Mamacita, and she refused to come out of her building, and a lot of people believe because she was overweight. But that's not the case. Not at all. The right reason was because she refused to learn English, so there was no way she could communicate to everyone else in the community. She was insecure about not being able to speak English, so this was the main reason why. Or another character that was held back by the power of language was Ruthie, who was an adult character, but she had a very childish mind, but a very creative spirit. And she did have poetic abilities, but she was unable to express those poetic abilities because of her lack of English. Okay, and then, so, I'm going to go through some of the characters to help, just for us to see how they make up the novel. But before I do that, I'm going to go through some symbols and motifs. So basically, in the novel, trapped women was a big part. So let's say it's trapped. And a lot of women would look out a window. And this window symbolized hope and a means of escaping Mango Street. But another case was there was trapped women who did not look out a window, but they were all basically held back by the men in society. Men were very oppressive in this society, and this kind of just held women back. Another thing is to pay attention to names. A lot of names have more than one meaning. I know that Esperanza's name is very complex. Although it means hope, it can also mean her state of being and who she is as a person. There's a lot of Hispanics had their Hispanic name, and then they also had a nickname. And this was just because they were in an American society, so to combine cultures and show some biculturalism that was influenced by the atmosphere of their neighborhood. And each name had a significant meaning to it. So Mimi Ortiz, his name, we gave him the nickname of Juan. Or actually, sorry, it was Juan and it was the other way around. And let's say, Aunt Lupe, her name was Guadalajara, which is different names, and it was just easier to say the nicknames because they were in an English society. So an English society had a really big effect on them. Shoes. Sorry, these are shoes. Shoes had a really big effect on Esperanza. She would always refer to, let's say Sally had really nice shoes, and that showed sexual maturity and wanting to be desired. And Esperanza felt very uncomfortable and ashamed of herself because she did not have a good pair of shoes herself that would make her more sexually appealing. So shoes served as a sex symbol in this novel. And the monkey garden, I thought it's more of not really a symbol, it's more of like an illusion. And I thought the monkey garden was similar to the Garden of Eden. Because they were both places of innocence originally, but then they were all disrupted. The innocence was disrupted by a sin. So in that case, Adam and Eve sinned by picking the fruit from the tree and listening to Satan, while Sally kissed the boys, and that disrupted it. And I already talked about short stories, so now I'm going to get into some conflicts and then characterization. So some conflicts in the story is Esperanza finding her place in a society, not only as a Latina, but as a woman. So having that Hispanic and gender conflict was basically double conflict. So she was trying to be independent in a male-dominated society, but it was very hard to do that because a lot of men were very oppressive, like I had said before. But then she was also, as a Latina in an English society, she was trying to progress herself, but it was very hard because of many discriminations against Hispanic culture. So those are two things you can address in the prompt. There's a lot of prompts that are going to address either gender inequality, or let's say there could be a feminism prompt, we can address this issue, or there can be a racial discrimination prompt. Either way, you can't go wrong. And then another conflict is her struggle of finding her identity or coming of age. So basically, if you want to talk about a coming of age prompt, this is also a good way to go, because throughout this whole novel, she was trying to figure out who she was, not only the terms of herself, but in Mango Street, and she didn't figure that out till the end. And then another conflict, which is also a theme, was finding independence while in the midst of wanting to be desired by men. So that was another issue that was discussed. So before we end out here, I'm going to discuss some characters that I think are really essential to this novel. I'm not going to list everything in the literary review, but some characters that are very important. Of course, number one is Esperanza, who's the main, let's say, heroine of the story. And through writing, this is going to be a paper writing. Through writing, this is what sets her free and come to terms with Mango Street, herself, her family. And this writing was something, she helped her notice that her home is what she makes of it, not the other way around. Her home doesn't define her. She is the one that creates her home. And she slowly discovers her identity in an Anglo-American patriarchal society. And she knows that there's a lot of trapped women in her society, and she just wants to be that help once she gets out of it. So another important character I would like to focus on is, I thought the father personally was a very important character, because a lot of men in this society were described as very prejudiced, but I thought she described her father as a very caring man who worked very hard. Another character who I believe helped her figure out her identity was Alicia, and she wasn't a typical girl in society. She was, her mother died, so her father was forcing her to make the chores, but she decided to improve herself by going to a local college, basically, and educating herself, and this makes her a great influence on Esperanza because she got successful with going to university and giving back to the community, and that's who Esperanza wants to be. And then another important character, I believe, was just, I thought the three sisters and Elenita, basically the kind of, let's say, they read the future, let's say, that's what we're going to call them. I thought they were very important for her understanding her character and who she was, because each of their advice, home in the heart was a very important one, which was said by Elenita, and then the three sisters telling her to come back and help the society was also very important. So I thought all of those were very important. So I'm going to be ending it right here. But thank you for watching my video on the House of Mango Street. And basically, you can't go wrong with, this is a book that has a lot of complexity to it, and just, you can answer any prompt basically, whether it's culturalism, whether it's feminism, coming of age. There's just so much content, and it's a really, really, really good book. I was very surprised, actually, by how good it was, and thanks for watching. Bye.